Do I sound better now?
You sound much better now.
Okay. It helps when you actually turn the microphone on.
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. You're not just getting a little bit of microphone because of the preamps.
Yeah. And I assume I sound all right?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1.
What is up? This is the 6 Month Behind podcast for the week of 2/25/19. I am Pat.
And I'm Sean.
And this week we're Luke Perry because he died today, which is kind of sad. So
Is it?
I guess.
Dude, I didn't even know who Luke Perry was until he died.
You're a little young, man. It was like a 90s thing.
I mean, he was in 90210, which I only know about tangentially because I was a kid then and didn't care about 90210. But
yeah, he was only 52.
Yeah, he was 52, which is young, but he had like a massive stroke Friday or something like that.
Yeah, he had a bad stroke, and the impression I got was they just unplugged the machines.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
So how you doing, man?
I'm all right, man. How about yourself?
I'm okay. So did you see where our favorite app hit 25,000 comics?
I did. It's when you open the app, it's right there on the little landing page.
Yeah, and to commemorate it, they did two things. They put the top 25 comic books, which are apparently the top 25 most read comic books, from what I read, and then the top 10 storylines. Some of these surprised me. Some of them didn't. I didn't, that Guardians of the Galaxy #1, I didn't expect to be high on the list. I certainly didn't expect X-Men Blue to be there. Secret Empire.
Looks like, Secret Empire, Civil War 2, Civil War 1, Amazing Fantasy #15, which is the first appearance of Spider-Man, but like, dude, why?
Dude, because you want to read it.
Dude, it ain't that interesting. It's a crappy 60s comic book.
Which is why you never want to do what's next on crappy 60 comic books.
Yeah, because, dude, okay, compared to the stuff we get in the modern era, the stuff from the 60s is not good.
It was groundbreaking for the time.
Sure, in the 60s.
Right. It's Lee and Ditko and Kirby, man.
No, I'm not knocking the historical relevance of it. That I understand. I just don't want to go back and read it.
Okay.
Yeah. You got Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe.
That's pretty good, actually.
It is pretty good. You got Weapon X, which I don't understand. Spider-Man Miles Morales. Secret Wars. You got Ultimate Spider-Man #1. That makes sense. Black Panther #1, which is the most recent one from 2016, which is Ta-Nehisi Coates' run. Darth Vader #1, which is the most recent series. All those make sense to me.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that doesn't make sense is the top 10 storylines, which are the Clone Conspiracy events. Yes, I'm sorry. Storylines events. Yes, I'm sorry.
Infinity Trilogy. I mean, okay.
The Clone Conspiracy. Good Lord, the Clone Saga. Why would anybody?
No. That's the Clone Conspiracy, not the Clone Saga.
No, the Clone Conspiracy is #10. The Clone Saga is #9.
Oh, I see now.
Planet Hulk is #8. Secret Empire is #7. Secret Wars is #6. The Complete Infinity Event is #5. Civil War Part #2. Old Man Logan, the first Civil War, and the Infinity Trilogy.
Yeah, the only ones that don't make sense to me is Spider-Man and the Clone Saga, which I guess there's like some nostalgia for that stuff, but man, that stuff's bad.
It was really bad. I'm surprised. Oh, Secret Wars is here. Okay.
Yeah,
it's #6. I really like all that stuff that Hickman did in the Avengers and the Fantastic Four leading up to it, and which I guess is included in that.
No, that's Infinity, not Secret Wars.
Mm, that was all that time runs out stuff.
Yeah, that's before Secret Wars.
Right, but that's not included in Infinity. Infinity's the event where I'm looking. Bear with me. Well, it starts in New Avengers number 7,
right?
2013 edition. But Hickman's and it kind of runs for a few issues. But Hickman's time runs out. Starts in New Avengers number 1, Avengers number 1, and runs through when the books got canceled for Secret Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess they're the one leads to the other. So
yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway, that's there. I thought it was pretty cool. That's why I threw it up there. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, good place to start if you want to catch up on some events or didn't read some events, or if you're new to the app and haven't read a whole lot.
Did you see what Bleeding Cool did a couple of days ago?
No.
CB Lebowski and Joe Quesada are doing a panel at South by Southwest called how, I forget the exact term because I didn't save the article, how comics feed the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Bleeding Cool made the assumption that Disney was shutting down the Marvel comic side and basically shutting down Marvel for all intents and purposes. And this was where Lebowski and Quesada were going to refute that and argue why it shouldn't be done. And the next thing you know, it's all over Twitter that Marvel's closing their comic division. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I like Bleeding Cool okay, but sometimes they do stuff like that, and it really makes me not like them.
Yeah, I mean, he and Quesada both were, within an hour online saying this is a joke. I mean, it's got to be a really slow news day for y'all to print something like this.
Right, like you guys are just, and this is a problem I've had with Bleeding Cool for a long time, and it's why I tend not to rely on them as my prime source for comic book news, is that a lot of the time they get a lot of good insider information, and sometimes they kick up dust for no reason, just to kick up dust and get people to come to their page.
Yes.
When they have good legitimate sourcing and are often the first ones to break news. And it's not a good look, man.
No,
I mean, that's biting the hand that feeds you.
Yeah. And the reason I found it is I got a CBR showed up on my news feed 2 days later with everything that was refuting it. So once it kind of became a thing, CBR did an article and said, hey, this isn't a thing. Just ignore it.
And I mean, it makes sense when you look at the stuff that DC's doing, and that, they might be dismantling their publishing line, or, or at very least stripping it down to its barest minimum. But I really think the people who make these movies understand that you need the comic books in order to create the material that you can source for the movies.
Correct.
Because every time that they go off script and do their own thing for these characters, nobody likes it. I mean, look at X-Men 3 and all the other subsequent X-Men that isn't Days of Future Past.
Yeah.
All of them are plot lines and stories cooked up in a writer's room of a Hollywood, writing conclave or whatever, and not sourced from any real material, and they're awful.
Have you seen the Dark Phoenix trailer? I haven't. That's why I'm asking. Is it any good?
We'll see. I really like Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. I think she's really good in that role. I think that's the only good thing happening in these movies. And she's Marvel's going to put the kibosh on those movies after Dark Phoenix. So
we got our tickets for Captain Marvel Thursday night. We'll be there 7 p.m. Excuse me. Yeah, we're in, man. Come on.
I'm working all weekend, so I'll go probably this time next week.
Sure.
But I'm looking forward to it. early reviews are really good.
They're really good. And as we speak, Marvel's doing a red carpet event that's probably streaming on YouTube.
Probably so.
At this point, you'll probably, by the time you hear this, you'll be able to go back and watch it if you like.
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to tell us what Marvel movies you're looking forward to, you can email us at 6monthsbehind@gmail.com. That's the number 6monthsbehind@gmail.com.
The website is www.6monthsbehind.com.
And go check out our other show, What's Next, where we talk about the other things you can read in Marvel Unlimited. We're doing a series on Chris Claremont's historic run on the Uncanny X-Men. That we put part 1 up this past weekend, and so far you guys seem to like it. So we will continue with that.
It's funny because you were talking about bad 60s comics. There's bad 70s dialogue in those comics, but along the way, John Byrne and Chris Claremont were creating iconic characters and villains, and just, I mean, every issue they were doing something that, you know, is still being utilized today, whether it's the Hellfire Club or Dark Phoenix or Alpha Flight or Guardian or Protus as a villain too. Just the list just goes on and on and on of the things that they created.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look at the Dark Phoenix movie that's coming out. That's, you know, one of their biggest creations.
Yep. Anywho, we don't have any Infinity books this week. So our first book up is Avengers number 6, where we have Hulk and She-Hulk making out again, as we were discussing right before we go on air. And by the way, this book has a lot of Odin in it, and it's going to be completely the 1 million BCs of Avengers next issue. But Odin is drunk a lot these days in the books that are coming out leading up to the War of the Realms. And it's pretty freaking funny. There was somebody talking to him. I think it was Tony Stark. And he was like, where did you go wrong with this whole universe thing? And he was like, well, it started when I made mead. And and Tony was like, are you drunk again? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I was like, okay, this is, dude, it's really entertaining.
That's funny because, you know, Tony Stark's a recovering alcoholic. So
yes. Yeah. So it started when I made beer. There you go. So this opens and we have the giant size Hulk, the giant size She-Hulk, and Ghost Rider inhibiting a Celestial. And they're punching it out with the Celestials. It's not going very well. It's actually going pretty bad until they realize that the Celestials, and I'm not going to go page by page with this. I'm going to wing it. The Celestials planted the virus on Earth however many years ago because they knew that eventually humanity would evolve to have the cure for the virus. So they determined this, and they determined it through, what was the dude that died in issue 1, the Eternal? Anyway, he told Tony Stark that the Unimind was the answer. So they used the Unimind to get rid of the virus. Ghost Rider does. Then he starts talking to all the Celestials because he can. Somewhere along the way, I think Ghost Rider stomps on Loki and just kind of smushes him into the ground. She-Hulk and Thor start making out again. Tony asks Carol Danvers if he wants to make out, and he doesn't get a good response. The Celestials are happy, so they leave the Avengers a giant Celestial to set up as their new base. And there you go.
Yeah, it was good. Dude, Jason Aaron's killing it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this was hard to read every 2 weeks. But once I had the first 6 issues in my hand, 6 months ago when I was getting the hard copies, and you sit down and read all 6 issues, it flows much better and it really makes sense. So that really.
Yeah. I feel like that's the case with a lot of stuff these days. And it just goes back to making the case for releasing trades every 3 to 6 months.
They're writing these things for trade paperbacks. I mean, it is 6 issue arcs.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing because that's what you can put in a trade paperback, and that's what I can check out of the library. Yeah. There you go.
And why they're not, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense while they're still publishing weekly comic books. I understand it's a legacy format and that there's a collector's thing going on, but dude, I mean, you can't do it forever. You just can't.
Right.
Anyway,
So
we've talked about that too a ton of times.
ad nauseum.
Yeah, but I just don't. The format has to change. It has to.
Yep.
And I think it serves the medium better to be read in a large chunk like a trade paperback.
Right.
Because you get a story and go. It's what they do in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, how much better a read would this be if you just sit down and read all 6 issues at one time? It would be great.
Yeah. And I think that is also something that keeps people from picking up or sticking with the hobby is that they go and they pick up, the first 3 issues and then a month later they get issue 4 and they're like, oh yeah, what was going on and who was that guy? And they just forget what's going on and they don't enjoy the comics as much. And eventually they just quit buying them.
I was at the library a couple of weeks ago and they had the Pleasant Hill storyline and what was basically an oversized trade, which I'd never seen before. It's kind of like a 13 by 15.
Yeah, it was a library edition.
Yeah. And I really just wanted to see the art. And just kind of skim through it. And it reads so much better in that format than when you were just getting an issue every week trying to keep track of what was going on.
Yeah.
It read so much better, man.
And the reason for that is that's how these writers are writing the comics.
Yeah.
They're not writing them for issue to issue reading. They're writing them to be collected in trades. And I don't understand. I mean, if that's your method, then why are you breaking it up into issues just because that's how it was always done?
I don't even know.
Anyway. Next up is Avengers Wakanda Forever #1, which is the 3rd part in this Wakanda Forever series. It was all right. We begin with Nakia doing her Dora Milaje training many years ago in Wakanda. Then we flash back to now, where after she's trashed a grocery store in New York, T'Challa's shown up and has some choice words for her. She decides to renounce her evil ways and help the Dora Milaje find this weapon that she unleashed and recapture it or whatever, because it's some kind of like living weapon. The Avengers get in on the action. There's a big fight, of course, where the thing takes on the weapon takes on the form of She-Hulk, and the actual She-Hulk and the fake She-Hulk fight it out. And in the end, Nakia ends up sacrificing herself to save everyone else and neutralize this weapon. They have a nice funeral for her, and that's that. But the comic book isn't bad. It's okay. It's just that I didn't need or want this story, and it doesn't. It's real fluffy. It's real light on content. But what it did serve to do is get rid of a character that Christopher Priest created when he took over Black Panther in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Nakia served as an interesting character then, and a love interest for King T'Challa. But since then, and since she is no longer that, it's kind of been one of those things where it's like, what do we do with this character? She's very important, but we don't have anything for her to do anymore. And so they tried turning her into a villain, and nobody really liked that. And so she just kind of pops up occasionally in the Black Panther stuff. And this was a way to give her a nice exit, and now they don't have to deal with her anymore.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, before I forget, I want to back up to Avengers 6 for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a point where She-Hulk is eating part of the virus, and she says this tastes like a bomb. And and if you look at the art, what she's doing there is absorbing gamma energy.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2 or 3 issues, those few panels will be very important because this is Jason Aaron writing it, and he's always sowing seeds.
Right. Everything is something that's going to come into play later.
Yes. Next, we have West Coast Avengers #1. Now, before we begin discussing this is written by Kelly Thompson, who wrote the previous Hawkeye story. The art is by Stefano Caselli, which really isn't my style of art, but I think he also worked on that series. So, for all intents and purposes, this is a new Kate Bishop Hawkeye book. Now,
she's leading the team.
Yes. I think we disagree here because you didn't enjoy this.
Actually, I wasn't looking forward to it because I think the West Coast Avengers are ridiculous. But I skimmed this and read bits and pieces, and I didn't hate it.
Okay. I thought you did. I thought you had read it and hated it. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to eat a little humble pie here and say I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it.
This isn't Jason Aaron's Avengers, okay? This isn't Hickman's Fantastic Four. It's not Don Slott's Fantastic Four, okay? Dude, this is this is Gwenpool and Quentin Quire basically doing pranks on each other for an issue, okay?
Yeah. Like, that's who's on the team here is it's Kate Bishop, Quentin Quire, Gwenpool. I think Squirrel Girl is going to show up at some point.
Yeah.
This is not meant to be
America's there. America Chavez is there.
Yeah, this is not meant to be a serious comic book like Jason Aaron's Avengers is right now. This is goofy.
This opens with them fighting land sharks and ends with a 200-foot tigra. And there's 32 pages of comedy in between. So that should tell you what this book is about. And I enjoyed it. I did. It's good seeing him use Gwenpool again. It's getting Quentin Quire separated from the X-Men and letting him do a little something different. He and Gwenpool got that funny dynamic going. Kate Bishop is struggling to hold the whole mess together. Hawkeye's moody and overbearing like he always is. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it, man. It's not going to be my book of the week. I probably wouldn't buy it off the newsstand, but it was fun.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I'll agree, and I'll eat a little crow there saying it was, I didn't want it, but it was not bad, especially for a first issue because it was really just putting the team together.
Right.
But if you enjoyed Kelly Thompson's Hawkeye, her Kate Bishop Hawkeye, that she was doing previously, if you enjoyed that book, this is more of the same with a larger cast.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Moving on to X-Men, we have Hunt for Wolverine, Mystery in Madripoor #4, the final installment in this Mystery of Madripoor storyline. So a lot goes on in this comic, but the big thing is that Betsy Braddock's mind is invaded by this lady Styx. And Betsy Braddock kind of goes through all of her different personalities and personas through the years, and the woman's trying to take her over, and she's basically like a soul sucker. She siphons pieces of your soul and it lives off them. But because Betsy Braddock contains so many, she's overwhelmed and she's able to break out. And essentially, Betsy Braddock becomes the old Betsy Braddock. She's got her old body back. She looks like her old self. She's no longer Betsy Braddock stuck in the body of an Asian lady. And that's the real service of this comic book is it was, it's not as we've discussed, it's not a Wolverine comic. It was never going to be. But what it has done and has become a vehicle for is to reset Betsy Braddock as a character. The X ladies take out this team of whoever they are and team up with Magneto and fight them, and it's more of the same, but this is really just a vehicle to reset Betsy Braddock.
Yeah,
and I'm glad it's over.
And at the end, I got a little confused. Maybe you can help me. I guess her body is destroyed and she literally reforms her body molecule by molecule until it's what she wants it to be, which is like an amalgamation, if I use that word correctly.
An amalgamation?
Thank you. Isn't that what I said?
No, you said amalgamation.
Okay, whatever.
That's not a real word.
It's the Berkshire word for the week. It's the same word. I simply pronounced it incorrectly. Anywho, of all the people that she's been in the past.
Yeah. And if you don't know what we're talking about, Google Betsy Braddock, because I'm not going to get into it, but essentially Betsy Braddock has literally been many different people over the decades.
Yes. Yes. Next, we have Mr. and Miss X #2, and I don't care. If you're a Rogue and Gambit fan, they're on a spaceship in space trying to have a honeymoon. Deadpool's got some kind of egg that they're supposed to be guarding for Kitty, and they fight over the egg, and then the egg hatches, and it's a clone of Rogue, and I don't care. I actually gave it a chance and read this book.
That's weird.
And walked away with the same conclusion.
Okay. Yeah, that's a weird thing.
And you got all these jokes because, Deadpool and Rogue were dating a few months ago and, making out, and now she married Gambit on the spur of the moment, and Gambit's wanting to blow Deadpool up, and dude, it just wasn't good, man. Maybe somebody else thought it was.
I'd be interested to see the sales numbers on this comic, because I have a feeling that this is one of those books that Marvel really wanted to push and nobody wanted.
And I guarantee they sucked a lot of people in with #1.
Mm-hmm.
But because they did, it was that whole hidden trick thing that we talked about a month ago. And I bet you they dropped like a rock with #2. Because I got sucked into buying #1.
Yeah, everybody did. Old Man Logan #46. So a weird tentacle monster crash lands from space into the harbor off of Nova Scotia and eats a dog. A month later, Wolverine shows up in town, drops his bike off at a gas station, gets picked up by Alpha Flight, and goes to investigate the town and what's going on with this purple monster. But before that, he sits down with, what is this dude? The Shaman?
Shaman, yes, that is his name.
Yeah,
yes.
Alpha Flight's one of those I can't keep track of all the members. And Shaman's the scientist of the group, and he basically looks over all of Logan's medical info and does his own assessment and says, "Yeah, dude, there's no way around it. You're gonna die. The adamantium in your bones is so old it's beginning to decay. Your healing factor can't keep up with it. The Regenic stuff that you put in yourself has also overtaxed your healing factor. You're gonna die, and there's nothing to be done." So they go to this town in Nova Scotia, and everything's been taken over by these purple tentacles. All the people are dead, or at least that's what they think. The whole town's covered in these purple tentacles. Finally, they find in a church somewhere the nexus of this thing, and it's apparently been eating people. It's just slowly eating the flesh off of these people. Turns out they find some survivors holed up in a hardware store because Weed Killer seems to keep it at bay. But Logan manages to piss the thing off, and so purple tentacle monster fight.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like this is a storyline simply in service of saying, "Hey, Logan's gonna die, and we needed him to be able to do something in the meantime."
Yes,
we didn't want the whole issue to be about Logan dying.
Right, and I'll tell you what X-Men Gold 34 is about. This is an interesting storyline, 33, 34, and what I assume will be 35, because it's a Sorum Stolo book for 3 issues, and she's back there where she was raised in the African village, and there's this dude named Uvu, Swahili for evil, and he has resurrected her parents, and she has all these flashbacks, and she's happy to see her parents, and then turns out at the end, all he's done is zombify a bunch of people's bodies, and everybody's zombies, including her parents, and Stormbreaker isn't responding to her, and somewhere along the way, Kitty and Ileana are kissing and making up, and
not literally.
No, not literally, but that's what they're doing. I think they hug. It just feels like this is a 6-week filler, an issue every 2 weeks until they launch Uncanny in 3 or 4 weeks. That's what I feel like this is.
It is. They're just trying to run out the clock on this comic
until they get to Uncanny #1. Because they're putting out, at this point, they're putting out Extermination every 2 weeks. They're winding down the gold and blue books, and the red book is eventually going to be wound down. It'll go on a little bit longer, but they're winding down these books, and they're going to launch Uncanny.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. I think they should have just canceled it, but whatever.
I think so too. But when you're selling 50,000 copies a month, 75,000 copies a month, whatever, you don't want to do that.
No, why would you ever allow somebody an extra $4 to spend on one of your other comic books?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. X-Men Red #7. So a couple things are going on. Cassandra Nova is attacking Atlantis through via Teen Abomination. Meanwhile, in the sky, they've infiltrated this. The X-Men have infiltrated this airplane that's got this ambassador on it. Techno Lady gets shot. The Sentinel that she's controlling crashes. Namor and A-Bomb go at it. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
The real meat of the comic here, because this one was not a great issue, is that Jean Grey essentially exposes Cassandra Nova to the public. She takes the recording of the conversation that her and Cassandra Nova had telekinetically and puts it out on social media and says, "Hey, this is Cassandra Nova. Here's what happened that when that lady's head exploded in the first issue. This is who this is. Who's here? This woman's the culprit, and we're going to stop her." That's the real meat of the issue. The Teen Abomination and everything else going on is unnecessary.
Okay.
Dude, Teen Abomination walked into this comic book and I almost threw it across the room.
I'm reading Deadpool 2 on HBO, and like halfway through it, and Teenage Megasonic Warhead is just one of the best movie characters ever, man.
Now she's funny. Her. Like, I don't have a problem with teen characters. That's you, but I don't like Teen Abomination, and there's no reason for him to be in this comic book.
Yeah. Then I got to watching Skyscraper, and I got to flip back to Deadpool. Anyway,
what is Skyscraper?
It's that movie that Rock made last year. It's a combination of The Towering Inferno from 1978 and golly, what's the Bruce Willis movie? That's a series, Die Hard. It's a combination of 1991's Die Hard and The Towering Inferno from 1978.
Okay, so that sounds like a thing I don't ever want to see.
I mean, if you're into The Rock, it's not bad. It's entertaining. It is what it is, man. I mean, it's not
a dumb action movie that is dumb.
Yeah, it's not going to win Academy Awards. It's just, stuff getting blown up and The Rock being a hero.
Yeah.
He gets paid $20 million a film for it. It makes $200 million. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Next, we have our Spider-Man books. The only one is Amazing Spider-Man #4. This opens with Bendis Stroman, who is the Spider Slayer, I believe. And this is Nick Spencer. The name of this series, the 6-issue arc that we open with, and we're on issue 4, is Back to Basics. And he's rebooting Spider-Man. He's laying a lot of seeds for the future. Spider-Man has taken over the Tri-Sentinel while Peter Parker sits at home watching on TV. He gets to do all the things that he doesn't normally get to do, such as spend time with Aunt May and hang out with Jonah Jameson and lay around in bed with Mary Jane, so he gets to do all those things. But eventually he gets back to the lab with Doc Connors, and he realizes that this whole thing isn't really going to work out well because the two rats not only did they not live, but one basically lost its sense of morality and judgment, while the other one, I think, got dumber. So you got one that's smart with no morals and another getting dumb. So Peter Parker's getting dark, and Spider-Man doesn't remember who Uncle Ben is, nor does he remember the infamous saying. With great power comes great responsibility.
Right, yeah.
It wasn't bad, man. I mean,
no, I enjoyed it.
It's laying a lot of seeds for the future, so
it seems like not a lot happens in every issue.
Right. It's in that, in Jason Aaron writing the first six issues of Avengers, it was a beginning and end and a finish to a story arc. With what Nick Spencer is doing here with Spider-Man, it feels like he's laying the basis for a 50-issue story arc and isn't really telling a story each issue.
Right. Because, I mean, it feels like this could have just been, nothing changed between the previous issue and this issue. The story really didn't move anywhere. We got a little bit of new information, and that's about it.
Right.
But, I mean, I trust that it's going somewhere.
Yeah, I assume, yes.
Yeah, it better. Speaking of not really going anywhere, Black Panther #3. Don't get me wrong, I love Ta-Nehisi Coates, I love his writing, and I like this comic book. But this particular issue, you really only need to read the first 5 pages of, because it talks about the hero T'Challa in Wakandan lore, and how the T'Challa that we have seen in this series is the reincarnation of that T'Challa. And at least that's what people believe.
Hey, Ta-Nehisi Coates and Nick Spencer both do the same thing.
Which they write for the long term.
They write very long term. Okay, they're not writing a 6-issue trade paperback. They're writing an omnibus. You know, they're writing a 25, 50-issue omnibus instead of a 6-issue trade paperback.
Right. I mean, literally the first 6 pages are the meat of this comic book, where they explain to you exactly, like, okay, you're getting your question answered as to, is this the T'Challa, or like, is this a long time from now? Like, what's going on here? It's that, yes, at some point in the future, the Wakandan nation in Africa expanded into space, and over centuries became this huge empire. And the T'Challa that you and I know, of course, died at some point, but he has been reincarnated in order to bring the Wakandan Empire back to where it's supposed to be, as it's become this sort of almost galactic empire from Star Wars evil entity thing.
Right.
Anyway, they're infiltrating a base. There's a big fight. Manifold shows up at the end. The rest of the comic book is not necessary. Just read the first 6 pages.
There you go. Okay. Next we have Daredevil 607. Did you read this?
I did.
I'm glad, because my app just decided not to open it. What happened is, if you go back sometime in the 1960s, the books that you don't like, Daredevil, Matt Murdock created an alternate identity for himself called Mike, and he was supposed to be Matt's twin brother. And it lasted for 2 or 3 issues. And now Mike has appeared in a bar, actually a villain's bar, and I'm having to do all this from memory because I can't open the book to even look at it. You get a 2 or 3 page flashback explaining who Mike Murdock is. Then he and Daredevil get in a little bit of a skirmish. Then how is it they figure out he was created?
They figured out it was Reader.
Oh, that's right. Reader did it, which is just, if you're reading both books, if you're reading Spider-Man and Daredevil, you feel like you could be reading the same book.
Yeah.
Because they both have copies of themselves there, and you're like, what? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, if you read the 2 books back to back, they're ridiculous. The story itself, not the dialogue or the plot, but they're ridiculously similar.
They're very similar. Also, I feel like this whole like, oh look, Mike Murdoch showed up is also filler, because how does this service the story of taking out the Kingpin?
You know,
And
Charles Soule is writing this, and I know where he's going. I just don't understand how this has anything to do with it.
yeah, like I haven't. It's I don't doubt Charles Soule at all. It just feels like this was a filler issue so that they can. I don't know.
Right. I'm with you. I'm completely with you.
I don't see how the introduction and then erasing of Mike Murdoch is pertinent to the story. Maybe it will be. Maybe
Right.
as we continue reading, there'll be a reason for this. But I didn't understand it.
Absolutely. I didn't either.
Yeah. In Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur number 34 this week, Moon Girl takes Devil Dinosaur and turns him into a human boy so that he can go to school with her so she's not so lonely, except he's a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the body of a human boy, and you can imagine the chaos that he brings. So that's what's going on in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur.
That actually sounds funny.
It was real cute. It was real entertaining. He's just like, running around destroying things, and she's trying to wrangle him, and yeah,
That is funny.
It's ridiculous.
Next, we have Old Man Hawkeye number 8. The Red Skull has upped the wanted bounty for Hawkeye, so they have trouble getting fuel until Kate Bishop kills everyone, and then they get their fuel. The best part of this book, did you read this? Is the Red Skull has a team controlling the Winter Soldier, Bucky, remotely. I mean, what they're basically doing is controlling his mind and controlling his cybernetics. And he and Bullseye spend most of the issue fighting, which is just totally cool until Bullseye kills him by shoving something through his head, and Bucky thanks him for killing him. It's a good issue, man. It's a really good issue. And I just forgot this artist's name. I need to find it because I don't think there are any. Marco Cicchetto.
Oh, Marco
really good artist.
Yeah,
really good artist.
Good. There's something else he's doing coming up. I heard it on a podcast. They were talking about solicits that he's doing for Marvel soon. I can't remember what it was.
I really enjoyed it.
He's great. He's a great artist.
Yeah, I mean the art was great, and Bullseye and the Winter Soldier fighting in this thing was really cool.
Yeah. I'm glad you enjoyed it because I don't give a rip about Old Man Hawkeye.
It's one of those alternate universe things, and
that's the thing is like there's everything there that I should want in a comic book, and I read the first 3 or 4 issues and was like, no.
I like seeing old Kate Bishop. That's pretty cool. What they're doing with Bullseye and specifically Bullseye and Winter Soldier in this issue was really cool. It's good, man. It's good.
Cool. You know what wasn't good? Sentry number 3. Did you read it?
Yeah, I did read it. Yes. I didn't think it was bad. I'm with you. It certainly didn't live up to the standard of issue 1, and it wasn't great. No.
Yeah. So apparently, as we saw at the end of the first issue, somebody got into Sentry World and is trying to take over as the Sentry. And we found out that it's Bob's partner, what's his name? You know what? I don't care. Anyway, he recruits an old Sentry villain to help him out to basically what they do is they reformulate the Sentry formula or whatever, and he injects himself with it, and yeah, that's how he decides he's going to become the Sentry. Yeah, who cares? What has this got to do with anything? You're muted, so I can't hear anything you're saying.
Hello. Sorry. I was coughing. My apologies.
Okay.
Don't roll your eyes at me, man. You're about to talk about Punisher number 1. In between are The Life of Captain Marvel number 2 and Venom number 5, neither of which the Marvel app, which I love, and they now have 25,000 comics, and they've got the comics rated by best comic and 10 best storylines or events, if you will. But they won't open these 2 friggin' books for me. And I'm dude, fix your app. For the love of God, fix your app.
Yeah, Life of Captain Marvel was actually pretty good. She did, at the end of the last issue, she discovered a love letter that her deceased father had written to another woman, and most of the issue is her struggling with how to confront her mother about it because she thinks her mother doesn't know. Turns out her mother did know and hid it from the whole family for decades.
Okay.
So yeah, Punisher number 1. Go ahead.
I mean, here's the thing. Captain Marvel is having one of the biggest pre-sales ever, and will probably do somewhere between $250 and $500 million. Avengers 4 Endgame is going to hit theaters next month. It'll probably do $2 billion worldwide, and you can't spend a few thousand and fix your friggin' app.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone on and on about problems.
I know. I just wanted to say it again because it irritates me that I can't open books.
Well, I didn't have a problem with it.
I know.
But I occasionally do have that problem where
I click on a book and it says, oops, something went wrong. Please try again later.
Yeah. Usually what I do then is I'll just uninstall and reinstall the app.
Yeah. Anyway.
Punisher number 1. This is kind of a soft relaunch for the Punisher. He's out of the War Machine suit now and finds himself on a boat in Morocco where Hydra agents are taking over, mostly because on the boat is a ambassador of some kind. And Baron Zemo and Dario Agger, who's the CEO of Roxxon, have entered into an agreement.
Who is everywhere these days.
Yeah, he's showing up everywhere. He is in everything. I don't know what's going on, but he's all over the place. He's I feel like every now and again Marvel just really likes a particular character, whether it be villain or minor superhero, and they just show up all over the place.
Was that the Mandarin somewhere in this book?
Yeah.
Because they're calling the dude the Mandarin. So is that the Mandarin from the Iron Man books or someone else?
No, that's the Mandarin.
Okay.
Guy with 10 rings. That's the Mandarin.
Yeah, okay. All right. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, the 3 of them together are essentially intending to manipulate the UN into recognizing one of their countries as legitimate, the country of Bagalia, in order to rule the world or something. I don't know. Either way, the Punisher came in and intends to F up those plans real hard, including assassinating a guy in front of the UN assembly. In fact, he assassinates the Mandarin in front of the UN assembly. So, yeah, at the end there, he's going to war with the guy with the sock on his head, who I can't think of his name because I'm staring right at him and I can't.
Baron Zemo.
Baron Zemo. Why could I not think of Baron Zemo? Nick Fury's paying attention. I assume Bucky and Black Widow are going to show up in this at some point. Yeah, it's dude, he intends to make amends for his joining Hydra at some point.
I'd like to see Maria Hill join this book for a couple of issues.
Yeah, I would too. I think she's
conspicuously absent recently.
Yeah. She's another one of those characters that every now and again Marvel will just get a wild hair and she just shows up in everything.
Yeah, I was reading something. I'm ready for him to bring S.H.I.E.L.D. back in some form. Yeah, the whole helicarrier army thing.
Yeah, me too.
Was it? Where did I see Thunderbolt Ross? And was that in a Captain America book?
Captain America, yeah, he's in Captain America,
and he's basically
a traitor.
Reforming S.H.I.E.L.D., but he's calling Captain America a traitor. And
well, no, slight spoiler, but if you continue to read that series, Thunderbolt Ross is the traitor.
Oh, I know what I read. I'm reading. I was reading Avengers number 10 or 11 or 12, and he was in it. Okay, that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Next, we have our Star Wars book, Darth Vader number 20 something. Number 20. Yeah. It's the first one. This is interesting. Let me quiz you about your Vader Star Wars lore. When does this take place?
This takes place sometime after. What do you want, general or like very specific?
No, general.
Between the first and second trilogy. This is after Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, so this is. I think we've decided, or they've decided, there's like 18 or 20 years between those two movies. Is that about right?
You know, that time is nebulous, and it always kind of has been, but especially now that they've wiped out the old canon, it's particularly nebulous. I've seen it quoted anywhere between 8 and 20 years.
So this is
with somewhere settling around like 15.
So this is somewhere like a year or two into it.
Yeah, probably a year after Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, let me discuss it, and then we'll get to why.
Okay.
Darth Vader, either through boredom or because he's a homicidal maniac, or because he actually thinks they're doing something wrong, decides to kill a couple of his inquisitors. And it's a good fight scene, takes like half an issue, runs all across Coruscant. They kill a senator along the way, which is pretty important to the Emperor.
That whole scene was hilarious because
it was hilarious. Yes.
The senator and his girlfriend or whatever are literally in a park having a picnic, toasting to their love as a speeder lands on top of them. It's hilarious.
It's funny, and it's well drawn too.
It's a moment of humor that is particularly absent from Darth Vader a lot of the time, and it was just it took me so aback that it made it even more funny.
So turns out the Emperor is not pleased with this, because not only did Vader kill two inquisitors essentially without evidence, but he did it on the Emperor's homeworld, creating a lot of havoc and killing a senator that was important to him.
Yeah.
So what you see here, and this is why I asked you when the timeline was, is because you see Vader and the Emperor not getting along.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always kind of a Sith thing, where the apprentice always wants to rise to the power of the master.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can also see where they're kind of sowing seeds for when Vader overthrows the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really interesting. I thought it was. And that's why I was curious when it happened, because, the Emperor chooses him a new one, says, okay, you're bored, gives him a spaceship, which is Princess Amidala's old ship. And then he wants him to go kill Bail Organa. And Vader says no. And there's this, panel where they just look at each other, and the Emperor says, I'm sorry, no, you told me no. And finally he decides Vader's bored, and he decides, okay, Vader needs his own planet, so he can blow stuff up and kill everybody, and it'll be all good.
Wreak havoc somewhere that isn't, the center of the galaxy.
Yeah, and they settle on Mustafar, which I guess is important for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mustafar is the lava planet where he became Darth Vader.
Okay, dude, you want me to tell you Avengers history? I can talk about Avengers all day long. You get into Star Wars history, that's your department, man.
Yeah, Mustafar is where he and Obi-Wan are having that lightsaber fight where he gets all his limbs cut off and nearly burns to death.
Okay, all right. I didn't know, man. I just knew it was a planet with the volcano. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So if you couldn't tell by the name of this story arc, it's called Castle Vader.
Yes.
And Darth Vader builds a castle on Mustafar. And you see this castle in Rogue One. That castle overlooks the very place where they had that lightsaber fight and where he burned to death. That river of lava that you see and the bank where that is where he laid there and burned.
Okay.
And that's where he sits and meditates and becomes one with the dark side of the Force.
There you go.
Yeah. Also, the way he kills these two Inquisitors is just brutal.
It is, man. Yeah, it is.
I mean, they're, they get the drop on him. He freezes them with the Force and makes them turn on each other. And if you're wondering why they did that, it's because the other Inquisitor, first of all, they're in love, and that's not supposed to happen. He's mad about that. But they were going to let the Jedi with the baby go, and only because Darth Vader saw them did they catch the baby. They were going to let him go. And what he essentially his theory was that they were still holding to Jedi tenets in their minds. And so, because you notice that he calls them Jedi, and essentially what they were trying to do was infiltrate the Sith Inquisition and eventually kill Darth Vader.
That's his story.
Yeah, that's his story.
Yeah, the Emperor is skeptical.
Yeah, because he killed all the witnesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kill all the witnesses, you ain't got a story.
There you go.
Yeah. I ain't even going to tell you about Dr. Aphra 23 because it's such a cluster. Dude, this book is off the rails. None of it makes any sense. I've been reading this comic for 23 issues, and it doesn't make a dang bit of sense. I don't know. She's still working for 000, who's trying to blackmail her, and they're on some planet that's about to crash into another planet or something, or they're on a spaceship that's going to crash into a planet. And she's also got this dude that she's trying to ransom, and there's some sort of Jedi artifact they're trying to find. And I don't understand what's happening. I don't.
Dude, we just discussed your knowledge of Star Wars lore. And if you can't keep up with what's going on in this book and your ability to read and follow comic books, then it's a cluster.
Yeah, dude, there's so many there's no joke, at least 6 storylines all happening at one time in 23 pages of comic.
That's funny.
It's a mess.
That's funny.
It doesn't make any sense, and they need to cancel it. It's done, guys. It's done. You've ruined it.
What was your favorite book this week?
Probably Darth Vader.
Darth Vader was very good. I'm going with Punisher #1.
Oh, really?
I really enjoyed that. I really did. It was a good relaunch of the character.
Yeah, it was a good issue, and I like this that he's like basically hunting down Baron Zemo. The Punisher's good at one thing, and that's killing bad guys in brutal ways, and that's what he's always doing. But when it's big game like Baron Zemo, that's when it's really good.
Sure.
What was in the dump this week? I didn't even look.
I don't know, but I'm kind of scanning what's there. They put some Marvel fanfares on in the dump. I think it was this week, and maybe these Nova books came out this week. But Marvel fanfare started as not a one-shot book, but kind of it was a graphic novel before there was graphic novels.
Yeah,
and they were always like one shot, and they were really good. And
it kind of self-contained stories, right?
Right, and evolved into something else. See, I'm looking at it. It's the one I'm looking at, number 44. Yeah, 44 is $1.95 when books were $1 a piece, or 75 cents, or something like that. So there were always oversized books and high quality. It was basically the launch of the graphic novels that Marvel was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're really good.
Cool.
Anyway, yep.
Cool. Well, that will wrap us up for the week. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email us at 6monthsbehind@gmail.com. That is the number 6monthsbehind@gmail.com.
The website is www.6monthsbehind.com.
And also check out our other show, What's Next, where we're talking about Chris Claremont's run on the X-Men. It's been very good. We will be doing a second part very soon. Before we go, as is customary, Pat, do you have any wisdom to bestow upon us?
Yeah. my wisdom this week, and I'm gonna talk for a moment here, is by a guy by the name of Eric Thomas, who grew up in inner city Detroit, was homeless for several years, took about 12 years to put himself through college. It took him 12 years to get his master's, another 2 or 3 to get his doctorate. So he is now Dr. Eric Thomas. And if you ever want to be motivated, look that guy up on YouTube. I mean, dude. There's a video of him talking to some school kids, and it is hilarious because he just loses his mind. And he just tells them, he's like, look, I got companies paying me $50,000 to come talk to them an hour. And you kids can't keep your freaking attention for 10 minutes. And you want to know what's wrong with America. It's great, man.
That's awfully self-important of him.
Well, it was true, man. I mean, they were sitting there, talking, playing on their phones, doing everything in the world, but paying attention to him.
Yeah, but they're kids. I mean, what do you expect?
They're high schoolers. No, man, they were high schoolers.
Okay, dude. All right, whatever.
Anyway,
they've never heard of the guy, so why should they pay attention to him?
Because he's trying to raise money for their school and help them.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying from their perspective, they don't know who this guy is. They don't have any context. So he's demanding respect that he hasn't earned.
I disagree. But anyway,
okay. Well,
he said, you can't shine like a diamond if you're not willing to get cut like a diamond.
Okay. Whatever. Yeah, I don't think very highly of this guy either. So
okay, fine.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.
Peace.